control and prevention, people aged 15 to years old acquire half of all new STDs, and that 1 in 4 sexually active adolescent females has an STD. There's controversy over whether comprehensive sex ed should be taught in public schools between those who believe it's important for the students to learn and those who believe parents have the right to say no. First, I'll talk about why supporters believe it should be taught in our schools, and then I'll talk about why opposers believe parents should be able to do it at home if they choose to. People who are in favor of comprehensive sex ed in schools believe that it's students' right to have the knowledge to protect themselves from diseases, pregnancy, and from potentially harmful future adult-like relationships. The Huffington Post states that teens who receive formal sex education tend to wait longer to have sex, and when they do get around to doing the deed, they're more likely than teens who haven't had sex ed to use contraception. Since there is more than one study to back up this claim, many supporters believe we should give the students all the resources and knowledge we can so they can protect themselves. People in favor of comprehensive sex ed think showing students different types of contraception and birth control won't hurt them but will help them in the long run. That even if they don't use that information now, at some point in their life it will come in handy. At some places in our nation, instead of comprehensive sex ed, they teach abstinence only. According to an article on MIC Network, a study found that teenagers who received comprehensive sex ed were 60% less likely to get pregnant than someone who received an abstinence-only education. Abstinence only teaches students just to not have sex. That's how they protect themselves. People and students are eventually going to experiment, so those in favor of comprehensive sex ed think we should beat them to when they're having sex to give them all the resources we can now, so when they do decide to, they can be safe and healthy. Comprehensive sex ed isn't only about condoms and birth control. Its supporters also believe it helps young adults learn about consent and what a healthy adult relationship should look like. Many people now believe that consent is a very important topic that should be addressed in our schools, even if not related to sexual activities. Supporters believe that by teaching consent along with regular comprehensive sex ed curriculum, students will grow up and live happy and healthy lives, both physically and emotionally, and have healthy relationships. According to an article by CNN, only 8 states require consent to be taught along with their sex ed courses. Supporters believe that consent is just as important as how to put on a condom when we're talking about sex education. While supporters believe it's the young adult's right to have access to this knowledge and resources, opposers believe that sex education should be left for the parents to decide when and how they tell their children about it. Opposition to comprehensive sex education in our schools believe that it shouldn't be taught for many reasons, including, but not limited to, it being inappropriate, religious reasons, and that it encourages students to have sex at a young age. One reason people are against this type of sex ed is because they believe the material being taught is inappropriate for the students. Sex ed can start in elementary school, which is pretty young. With increasingly liberal sex education laws like the California Healthy Youth Act, parents are worried that their students are being sexualized too young and that they're being exposed to too mature of content when they should be focused on math and reading. Many opposers agree that sex education is exposing too young students to this graphic content and that they should be focused on other material, not that. Other people are against it because of religious values. For example, in the Christian Bible, having sex before marriage is a sin. So, based upon that, many parents who practice Christianity don't want their children learning about sex. Many supporters fall back on our country's values and beginning in religious freedom and use that to support their argument that parents should be allowed to teach their students and kids what they feel is right about sex, not what the state or government feels like what the student should know about sex and contraceptions and birth control. Another key argument the opposition of comprehensive sex ed has is that teaching kids about sex will encourage them to have sex at a younger age. In 2 national surveys, Investigators found that between 4 and 8% of boys reported having sex before they were 13, which is really young. This reporting from CBS shows that kids are having sex at a very young age. Numbers like these are used by the opposition to say that if comprehensive sex ed was really effective, students wouldn't have sex this early. Many parents fear their child getting unwanted diseases and pregnancies at a young age. So people on this side believe that if we keep our youth away from sex as much as possible until they're old enough to understand it, that they won't experiment because they feel like they're safe with the new information they learned in their sex ed classes. Both sides have valid arguments, and both really have the same goal: young adults not getting diseases, not having kids, and living happy and healthy lives. Again, there's controversy on both sides whether comprehensive sex ed should be taught in our schools or not. First, I talked about supporters of comprehensive sex ed, and then I talked about opposition and why they believed it should be left out of our public schools. And just as a closer, a lot of the time people fight really hard over their feelings on this subject. But if everybody just took the time to stand back and talk to each other without fighting, they'd realize they really had the same goal in mind.